What is up, guys? Welcome to the agility review. Let's just get right into it. Curse. This is a card that I run in my Miracle Assassin deck. I think it's okay in an action assassin deck that's like built around actions and such. Tempo-based action kind of deck. Like, run lesser wards, run curses, pretty good. You really want to get this off Smuggler's Hall if you're running that kind of deck. It's really good off of that. As far as putting into your deck, though, outside of those two decks, I would never put this into any deck, really, right? Yeah, pretty much I would never put this into any deck, except for those kind of decks. You're only going to run 0 Magicka cards for tempo, but it is a pretty strong tempo card in those kind of decks that build off action synergy in the first place. So yeah, you're pretty much not going to run it unless you're running Miracle Assassin or action-based synergy assassin. Murkwater Goblin, I mean, pretty obvious. You're not really going to run him outside of a Goblin deck. Yeah, this guy just doesn't really do enough. I do like his text because what that reads to me is that eventually they're going to have cards that are like, this guy is a 0-3 guard. On the enemy's turn, he becomes a 2-3 guard with lethal or something like that. That shows me that the design space is pretty cool of this card, so I like that that idea is in the game. But as far as this card goes, yeah, you're pretty much just going to run in Goblin decks. He's not quite good enough to run in any other decks. The only thing that he does synergize with is he is a really nice 0-drop for Astromancer off Smuggler's Hall, but you're not going to run him just for that reason without Smuggler's Hall. Like, you might as well run red-blue with fire bands at that point, and the reason why you're running green-blue is for the drain, and you're not going to run this guy in that deck. So, pretty much just for the Goblin synergy. Maybe in the future you'll find a place, but 0 Magicka 2-1 that can become a 0-1, not quite good enough. Arrow in the knee. It'll be ran in Shackle decks, but Shackle decks aren't quite that good right now. It's like, it's an interesting card. Shackle is one of some of the strongest techs in the game because it basically makes your enemy, there's no way to play around it really. Like, you can run Jed's Renegade, yeah, I know that, but you're not going to run him. At least not yet. And there's not really a reason to run, like, silence your own minion in most cases. Like, you're not going to want to silence your own minion in most cases where it's shackled, because if they shackled it, it's probably something you don't want silenced in the first place. So you can rule that out in most cases. So it's a very hard text to play around, so eventually maybe those will find a home, but for now it's not quite played. Just because, like, sure, you can get some tempo from it, but at that point you might as well be running Mace of Encumbrance, which sort of does the same thing, but with a added stat bonus for just the 2 extra costs. You get, +2 attack and +1 health to a minion, which is a lot better than just dealing to 1 damage to a minion, and you get the shackle anyways. So this would mainly see play in a control deck, and maybe eventually like an assassin action-based deck would run it, but as of right now, it's not good enough to be running that deck. But maybe it like almost makes the cut, but it's not quite there. Winter's Grasp is just better. Like, playing a Winter's Grasp, making your enemy completely miss their turn, and then whacking their face with like a 7-5 freaking Tower Crafter and a Hex Mage going off on them while you're doing so. That's what is really good. This card, though, is not quite there. Maybe it'll see some tech play. It's not that bad of a card in that said deck with Tower Crafters and such. Like, if you really just feel like your enemy's trying to face race you, you can shackle up their minion and ping it off or whatever it may be, and then you can go face with your Tower Crafter. But as of right now, it's not quite needed. Yeah, I would not Soul Trap any of these cards, by the way. All of them could see play in the future. Mournhold Guardian. This card can be Soul Trap. This is the first one of green that I would say you can Soul Trap. 1 Magicka 2-1 guard is just not quite good enough. You'd rather it be a 1-2 anyways, and even at that point there's a 0 Magicka cost 1-2 guard in the game. So yeah, there's just so many things this doesn't answer either way. Like, maybe if it was a 3-1, even then, it's just, I don't know. Like, there's probably going to be some Dark Elf synergy in the future or something, but she's essentially a token. Like, you get her off of the 4-2 guy that turns into her. I forgot his name, Sadras Agent or something like that. And in that case, she's okay. But with just herself, putting her into a deck, I don't really see a reason why. She doesn't make the cut in a lot of cases. Yeah, you can Soul Trap her. Just, she doesn't trade very well into anything. She's not something good you want to run. If she had Prophecy, maybe, but she doesn't, so she's just not quite good enough. Shadow Shift. Here's a card I think is highly underrated. Okay, I straight up think this card's highly underrated. It's not ran in almost any decks, and I don't know why. Moving a creature. All right, first off, this is a cycle card. Okay, it completely cycles itself for only one Magicka. That's insane. And the fact that it also has action synergy and the fact that it moves a creature while doing so is even more insane. This card's one of the strongest cards in the game. I'm not even kidding. The fact, like, swapping lanes is extremely powerful, and a lot of people underrate what this text means. There's so many cases where this text is really good. There's just so many. Like, the possibilities are endless. You have a 1/2 lethal, and you have a guy you don't want to die to it, otherwise he's going to die for free. Play this, you cycle a card, and yeah, you're in a really good spot. You're just playing a 1/1 Ashlander and you have nothing else on your play, and you can just play this, cycle for something better. Oh wow, you top decked, Manticora or something. Like, who knows, right? Obviously you can't run Manticora with those two cards, but you get my point. Like, you top deck something really crazy good. Yeah, this card's just really, really good. Keep it. Run it in some of your decks. Try it out. See if you like it. You might only need to run 1 to 2 copies, but there's almost never a case where this card's bad in any deck, really. That's the crazy thing. Like, there's never a case where this card, you're like, oh man, I wish I didn't draw Shadow Shift. Like, no, there's never a case of that. Unless you're extremely heavy control deck. Okay, let me just make that exception. If you're like such a control deck that everything you do is reactive, then there might be certain cases where, like, I need to draw this Ice Storm or something, right? And you're not playing enough minions to make use of this, if that makes sense. So in those cases, okay. But every other deck, you should run this card if you're running green and test it out and see how much you like it, because there's so many things you can get around with this card and just so many things you can do, and it just cycles itself anyways. And there's 50 card decks in this game, so cycle's always loved. This card's really good. Really, really good card. Ungolem the Listener. He's good. You want to run him with a lot of cycle. That's what makes him good. Without a lot of cycle, he's basically a mud crab. So yeah, run him with a lot of cycle. If you don't have a lot of cycle in your deck, honestly, I think he's not worth running if you don't have a lot of cycle in your deck. Or if you don't have enough stall to get to the assassins, even without the cycle. But if you don't meet any of those two requirements, don't run them. But aside from that, pretty much run them in every deck that you have cycle or stall to get to the assassins, because yeah, there's a lot of cycle in green color as well. Green and purple, I believe, actually have the most cycle. And then, well, I guess blue has a lot of cycle, if you count certain niche cycles. And then red has the most actual card draw. But yeah, this guy is good, really good with cycle, because if you can get to the Brother Assassins, they're 1 Magicka 3/3s, which is insane for 1. And they have lethal, and they cycle as well. So once you get to those, you can just start really going off on people, and those cards are really good. But if you don't have cycle, then, like I said, this guy's basically a mud crab. Or if you don't have ways to stall until you can get them, this guy's basically a mud crab. So, but definitely keep him. Don't soul trap him. He is a solid card. He's really good. Eventually, maybe if fatigue and stuff becomes a thing, maybe this guy could become an extremely powerful card if fatigue ever becomes a thing. Right now, it doesn't look like there's any support for it, though. It doesn't look like they're going to print any support for it, at least as of yet. Maybe in the future, but right now it doesn't look like there is, so that deck doesn't exist. And yeah, or more assassin synergy, because it looked like there's a title for getting Brotherhood Assassins playing more, and this guy might fit that if we get more synergy for Brotherhood Assassins, which it seems like we will. Ferocious Spriggan. I don't really like a lot of 1 Magicka drops in this game, because basically it's like, why run 1 Magicka drops and 2 Magicka drops? You can run more 3 Magicka drops, and 3 Magicka is where all the power is in this game. Like, the power level of 3 drops compared to every other drop in the game is so huge. So, and this does not deny that exception. It's a 2/1 drain, which is okay. Drain's typically better than guard in most cases, because it's on a 1 drop at least. Rarely is guard better. Like, guard could be better in certain situations, but almost always drain's just better. Yeah, if you can hit face at least once. If it's like a 3/2 and you play your 2/1 guard and they have no way to kill it, which is highly unlikely, and then they have to trade the 3/2 in, then in that case the 2/1 guard's better than this. So yeah, either way, neither one's played. Safe soul trap for now. Maybe the Drain deck will get more synergy later, and then that'll be the Spriggan deck will come out of nowhere and be really strong. Cutpurse, Darien Cutpurse. This guy's really strong. Yeah, he's just really strong. He's a 2 magic, a 2/2, which isn't too bad. He has an upside, a Pilfer. He's a 2-drop that could eventually need to be answered. People are saying Murkwater Savage is OP, but apparently this guy's not OP, Kappa. But, and he has Prophecy. So you can play him for free if they go face, if you're both face racing, and then this guy just wins you a game or something. Like, this guy's really strong 2-drop. Yeah, one of the strongest 2-drops. Just really good, really strong. Definitely don't soul trap him. He's ran in a lot of decks. He's ran in Pilfer decks. He's ran in Tempo decks. He's ran in quite a few mid-range decks. Not really ran in control decks, though. But, yeah, all the other decks he's pretty much ran in. So, really good card. Dune Stalker. This guy is interesting. I don't think, like, alright, I like the other one more because it's cycle with switching lanes and has action synergy. This guy doesn't have any of that. The swapping lanes mechanic isn't quite have enough built around it yet, but I know Boom's Life has ran it without running a complete deck dedicated to it, which is interesting. And, yeah, like, he runs this in his Monk deck, so it's not bad, and I would keep it just for that reason alone. But I don't think this card's really that great. He runs it for a very specific reason, though. Like, he runs all the swap lane mechanics just to make sure his Pilfers can go off, which is interesting. So outside of Khajiit deck, I would not run this card at all. And in the future, though, I think it'll be really good because they're clearly going to have a swap lanes kind of style. But it's just not quite there yet. Because right now, all you have is the 3 swap lane cards. And then the 4th one is that one guy that... he's a 1/6 guard for 3. He was in the willpower review, and then whenever he attacks face, he swaps lanes. So you can build him up pretty heavily with these, but he's not quite good enough to run a complete deck based around it, right? So yeah, keep the card just because I know Boom's Life is a very huge advocate of saying to run this card, and outside of that, I probably wouldn't have suggested for you to run it outside of Khajiit decks, like supported with the combos and all that. But yeah, give it a try, maybe you like it. 2 magic, a 3/1's really bad, but a 2 magic with Prophecy and move another creature makes it pretty decent. And like I said, moving other creatures are really strong text. Prophecy's really strong text, so it's basically a 2 magic, a 3/1 with extremely powerful text. Elixir of Light Feet. This card's interesting. The issue about cover, if it blocks spells and everything for 1 turn as well, this would be broken. But because it doesn't, this card's not very good for now. In the future, maybe it will be, but for now, the only way I can see this card seeing any play at all is if you used it with the swap lane mechanics, because you could give your guy cover, and then there's nothing they could really do to it, and then you could, aside from spells, obviously, and then you could swap lanes if they put down a guard or something, but that's so lucky in a sense. Like, that's not going to happen a lot of times. It's very inconsistent in that kind of sense, and so yeah, it's a safe soul trap for now. In the future, it'll probably, maybe we'll get something that's like, if you have 3 creatures with cover, this creature becomes a 20/20 with charge, or something like that. Then of course it'll be good. But for now, you can soul trap it. Fighters Guild Recruit. I don't think I have to really talk about this guy. He's really, really good. Yeah, just extremely powerful text. Put on a 1/2 for 2. I mean, a 1/2 for 2 is not playable, like stats wise, just looking at stats. But then you add Prophecy, and it's like, it's still not playable. You add Guard on top of that, and it's like, I guess he's okay. Maybe you could see playing some like Blood decks, and you add Lethal on top of that, and you're like, okay, this guy's really good. Like, he's not auto 3 of like I think a lot of people think he is in a lot of decks. But what he can do is, if you're in a more reactive deck, he is bread and butter. If you're in a reactive deck, this guy you're putting auto 3 of in any reactive deck. But if you're playing like a tempo deck or something, then there's really no reason to run him. Just because, so definitely run this guy. Just really strong, like I said, in reactive decks. Sorry, I had an interruption real quick. But he is just, yeah, really good. Don't play him in tempo decks. Don't play him in, I know people do, don't do that. Don't play him in aggro decks. But definitely any kind of sort of reactive mid-range to control deck, run him auto 3 of in every single one of those. Unless it's like a, nah, even in a Prophecy deck, built around Prophecy, I wouldn't run him. Finish off. This card's an extremely reactive card. It always only trades 1 for 1. It does have action synergy, which is interesting, but I don't run him in any of my action decks. He just doesn't make the cut. Yeah, if you're gonna run like lightning bolts, pretty much deal with all your big creatures you have to deal with, crushing blows, etc., putting ward and then trading into them if they're that big of a threat. Yeah, you just have so many ways to trade that you don't really need finish off, and it's an okay card. I mean, we all know it was played in Archer recently, so that's going for it. But I don't know. It's like it's one of those things that like it's so good. Like the mechanic of it is so good that you still kind of want to run it, just because destroying a wounded creature is so strong. That text is crazy. Like big creatures aren't playable because of cards like this. Um, so yeah, but because we know these cards exist, we start not running big creatures and we start only running creatures that do something to turn their played, which makes this card not as good, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit of a mind game, but this card's not that great. I probably wouldn't run it in a lot of decks. Maybe like extremely heavy control decks, but in that case, there's like, yeah, or extremely reactive mid-range decks, but in that case, I don't know. I don't think it's that great of a card. If once people stop playing around it, it'll be crazy good, but people are playing around it right now. That makes sense. Goblin Skulk. This guy sees play in Mehaxel's deck, or sorry, Mehax large 27, whatever. Uh, the best player in Elder Scrolls Legends right now. He's playing his deck everywhere, so yeah, really good card, I would say, in his deck. Outside of his deck, obviously, he has the Goblin Sentry, so can play good goblins. Basically, his deck is a zoo deck, by the way. He uses like this with Schemers and Cruel Fire Blooms and the little goblin guys, the O1s and all that. Actually, I don't think he even runs the O1s. What am I saying? I'm pretty sure he doesn't run those. I think he run. Yeah, I'll have to look up his deck. I don't remember it. Lost to it and don't even remember it. It's a really good deck though. But yeah, it's running that kind of deck where you can like draw Schemers off of it and you can just flood the board constantly and there's nothing to do about it. You can Cruel Fire Bloom with it and you scheme a Racketeer to Cruel Fire Bloom to Ashlander to kill 3 cards or something crazy, you know? Um, so yeah, it's kind of those kind of plays. With goblins, it's okay. Like you can just flood the board with goblins really fast and get lucky on turn 4 and then play the guy that buffs every goblin by +2/+2. But outside of that, it's not really played. Keep it though, just because those 2 decks, and they're probably going to get some more synergy in the future. We're not going to talk about this guy. Leafwater Blessing. This card's interesting. It's one of those infinite value cards. It is an action, which is interesting. So it does have action synergy. Maybe there's like a monk kind of action based deck. Maybe you could run this. It would be interesting. I don't know. It's an interesting card. I'm just trying to think for a second, like what it could be played in and everything, and like the obviously the complete drain, quote unquote OTK combo deck with Spriggan, maybe, but that's a little wishful until they add more cards. I think where this could see play is in an action synergy monk deck. Okay, like you run like the 4/4 guy that gives you drain. That's the issue though. Like yellow doesn't really give you anything good for an action deck. It gives you like javelin, and then if you're running this, you're gonna run the 4/4 guy, even though he's not that good, just to get the drain. So like, why are you doing that with your life in the first place? So you could be running a better card to complement green, like blue green, which is a way better action deck than monk. Even mage is maybe monk might actually be better than mage in a burn deck. I don't know. Yeah, not in a tempo deck though. But anyways, yeah. So this card, that's the main deck I would think it would see play, but I don't think it would be as good as just running assassin with the same kind of synergy. And that you'd only run this card in a monk deck because that's where you can get the drain and such. So I don't think it's good enough. You can soul trap it. Mournhold Trader. This guy is a lot better than this shows. He's been being ran a lot lately. Just a 2 magic at 4/4. What else needs to be said? He has a drawback, sure, but you can deal with that drawback with Pyro, the 2/3 that deals one Skyven or Pyromancer or something like that. You deal 1 damage to all minions and then it dies. You can run fireballs if you really need to. You don't. There's tons of ways to deal with the 2/1 when it comes off just pinging it in like an archer deck, and this guy perfectly finds a home in that archer deck. Uh, yeah. Outside of that. Some people run him in other decks even as well, just because he puts you so far ahead that it's kind of gross. He's essentially a 2/3 for 2, but his downside isn't. But like he has more damage up front, and then the downside is that you can deal with easily. It's statted to where you can deal with it pretty easily. So he's a good card. Keep him. Ran in a lot of aggressive and tempo-based decks, but you're not going to run them in like control or anything, or even a few mid-range decks. Yeah. Murkwater Witch. This card's good. It's basically a 2/2 for 2 with guard. It also has Finish Off and Leaf Lurker and Felnisty Reaver, I believe is the card's name, synergy, which makes it ups it by quite a bit. It has Goblin synergy, which means obviously it's going to be ran in Goblin decks. So in those decks, you should run it. Don't think he's good enough to be ran in control, because you would rather run the 1/2 Lethal Fighters Guild Recruit and the 1/2 Thieves Guild Recruit, stuff like that. So your 2 slots kind of already taken up, and this guy just doesn't make the cut. But outside of that, he's pretty much ran in every deck. He's ran in mid-range. He's ran in some aggro decks. Not very many aggro decks, but he's ran some, and tempo decks. Snaketooth Necklace. I think this card is underrated. I don't think it's amazing, but I think it's a little bit underrated. There's so many times when this card can save your butt. One thing to note, obviously, is Drain only works on your turn, so this card will not work with Archmage, which is the 8 magic at 6/6. When he dies, deal 6 damage to every enemy creature in this lane. It will not work with him because he has to die on your turn. So most of the times he's going to die on the enemy turn, then it doesn't work. So that combo is not going to work in most cases. So where does this card lie? You can do some pretty disgusting combos with it. You can give it to Dress Tormentor and then Winter's Gasp, and then you basically heal for your entire HP bar. And clear their board most likely. Yeah, you can do stuff like that. You can give it to Supreme Astromancer, which is pretty strong. Deals 4 damage to them, heals you for that instantly. It's pretty cool, and makes her a 4/4, which means you can't die to Crushing Blow or Ice Storm, stuff like that. You can also just give it to a minion because you're running kind of low and you just feel like you're not going to be able to deal with aggro and such. And you're about to get Soul Rest marshaled, and you can just play it. Boom, huge HP swing, right? I would not run it as a 3-of ever, but as a 1-of, maybe even a 2-of, it's okay. Especially in an aggro meta, it'll be broken, but there's probably not going to be an aggro meta until expansion or something. So yeah, this card's just okay. It's not terrible. It's not amazing. Don't soul trap it. Even though this suggests to, don't do it. This card's better than it looks. It's better than these people think it is. Thieves Guild Recruit. Yeah, this card is insane. Like, there's no better way to put it. 2 magic of 1/2, like I said, not really playable, but he draws a card, which already makes him playable, especially with finish offs and all that. And then you look at it, if it costs 7 or more, reduce its cost by 2. That is crazy. This guy could be a 2 magic of 1/2, ramp up by 2. Playing Odahviing as a turn 10 is insane. There's so many things this guy can do. I don't think he's playable. He's not playable in aggro. Honestly, I don't know why he's played in the Archer mid-range. Like, I get that he can activate finish-offs and stuff, and I get that he can maybe work with Tazgad, and he can maybe work with Reaper. Maybe that's reason enough to run him, actually. I don't know. But I think he's more of just a control card and a ramp card. Outside of those 2 decks, I wouldn't really run him, but definitely keep him. Really strong. Swindler. This guy's interesting. One thing I say about this guy is it's weird because, like, why is Keeper of the Whispers a card if this guy exists? Because the reason why we run Keeper of the Whispers is to tech against silences if you're running a deck that builds a bunch of weapons onto one guy, and then this guy just screws that over. really hard, and then Keeper's useless. What's the point of that tech card, if that makes sense? It's like kind of interesting. But yeah, he's 100% a tech card, and he will never not be a tech card, really. Uh, I'm trying to think, like, all right, in the meta right now, he's unplayable. I'm trying to think if he'll ever be playable, and it's hard to imagine he will be until an expansion or something. Like right now, weapon decks just aren't that great, and there's not really that many weapons that are ran right now outside like Still Scimitar. And stilling a Still Scimitar is not that big of a deal because they probably already played a charge minion, played it on top of the charge minion, hit you in the face for like 5 damage, and then you pop that in and steal it, and then they just build buff up the charge minion again, and then hit you in the face again. Like this guy just doesn't do enough right now. In the future, he'll probably be an extremely broken tech card, extremely strong, but against weapon decks. But for now, he's just not quite there. I can see him being really good in the future as that tech card, but yeah, completely unplayable right now. Safe to Soul Trap. Bandari Bruiser. This guy's completely for Khajiit decks. He's an okay aggro card, I guess. Thing is, you're just competing with so many other 3-drops. The thing is, though, this guy can win a game all by himself, which is interesting. In the combo decks, he will be ran, I think, like if you're going full combo. But he's not ran like Boom's Life, which runs combo, but it runs more of like a shell with the combo. But if you're going full combo, this guy's good. If you're going aggro, this guy's good. If you're going mid-range or control, this guy's terrible. If you're going tempo, this guy's terrible. If you're going, obviously if you're going ramp, this guy's terrible. So aggro and Khajiit combo full out. He's good. Black Sap Protector. This guy's interesting. He got the alt art, which is amazing, by the way. But he's interesting. He's really solid budget option. But outside of budget, he's a 3 magic, a 3/3 guard prophecy. So guard's pretty good. It makes it where a 3/3 would be playable, and then he also has prophecy, which makes him good. But I don't think he's like over the top good for the 3-drop slot. And like the things this guy competes with are insane. Like Young Mammoth, which is a 4/4, right? The fact that he has prophecy means he's good in. All right, so I'd play him in most. Alright, so he's not playable in aggro, but I would play him in quite a few mid-range decks. I'd play him in a decent amount of tempo decks, especially prophecy-designed ones. And at control, I don't think he makes the cut. Barely. But he doesn't make the cut. And once again, barely. Almost. So definitely keep him. Dune Smuggler, this is the stronger version of swapping lanes. He's the reason why you'd run that synergy if you're going to run that synergy, but don't run it because it's not quite there yet. Boom's Life runs this guy in his monk deck, so definitely don't soul trap him. He's good. Swapping lanes, once again, it's good. Buffing a guy by 1/1. So this guy's basically a 4/2 that also swaps another creature's lane. If you look at it that way, he's pretty good. Yeah, he's really good. Strictly better version of the 4/2 neutral in every way. So this guy is pretty good. Yeah. You're not gonna run him in aggro because every card really needs to go face. He can maybe be like a pseudo way to get past guards, so maybe it's like a really late game kind of tech card for aggro. Mid range and tempo, it's okay to run him. Control, there's some cases where it's okay to run him, but it depends what kind of control deck you're going for. Most of the times in control, you're going to want to just run tons of drains and guards and big creatures and stalls and all that, and this guy doesn't really fit into any of those categories or help out any of those categories really, so you may not run him in control. Feasting Vulture. This guy is really good. People underrate this guy pretty hard. He's a 5/4 for 3. What else needs to be said? This guy is extremely powerful. Don't run him in a control deck. Yeah, run him in aggro, run him in mid-range, run him in tempo. Like, there's so many cases where you can either kill off one of your own cards, like a Fireband, or you can just kill off one of the enemy's cards, especially if you're playing from ahead, and then you just play this guy. This guy's a freaking 5/4 for 3. Like, that's insane, okay? Insane. This guy's this guy's crazy strong for a 3-drop. Like, yeah. This guy's crazy strong. This guy should see a lot more play. I don't know why Corey Mills is the only guy to notice this guy's potential yet. Yeah. Giant Bat. I don't like this card nearly at all. When is this card good? It's a good anti-aggro aggro card. If that makes sense. Like you play them, you dump weapons on them, you go face, and then the other aggro deck can't outrace you. Outside of that, don't see them being played. Save Soul Trap. Greenheart Knight. Sky, I mean, obviously he's not very good. The one deck I see him being played in is Rothgar Forge Archer, because the main issue with Rothgar Forge is you need to stall to it, and with this guy, with a green deck, you can stall to it because of werebats and such and such. You have enough drains and such, you have enough guards and such to make it to late game. Play Rothgar Forge, you have 3 of these guys, you play on weapons on a 1/5 is really strong, and he has charge, so maybe it can be like a little bit of a way to kill your enemy late game in that kind of deck. But outside of that, this guy's not very good. He is technically saved to Soul Trap, I guess, but in that deck I can see him working. House Kinsman. This guy's good. He's not OP like people think. In the last gas deck, obviously you're going to run him. 3 magic at 3/3 is not playable, but then you add the fact that he deals 3 damage to the enemy and gains you 3 health, and he's pretty good. Yeah. He's basically a 6/3 that also heals you for 3. He's kind of like the Leper Gnome of this game, if that makes sense. It's basically what he is. He's always going to deal 3 damage to your enemy's face, pretty much. The rare cases where they have to silence, yeah, it's just not really going to happen. They're not really going to silence this guy. Silence isn't that prevalent in ladder, anyways. But yeah, so he's going to be ran in aggro. He's going to be ran in mid range and tempo, and he's not going to be ran in control. And he's not going to be ran in ramp. Also, you want to run him for synergies that have you higher HP, like Soul Rest Marshal and Jarl and stuff like that. Sets that up pretty nicely, and it's very hard for the enemy to play around it. Malefic Wraith. Give a creature -2, -2. Interesting. It's essentially like a 2/2 charge with action synergy, kinda, that goes past wards. I don't know. I don't think it's good per se, but I don't think it's terrible. It's like just a really niche card, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, I don't see this card ever being amazing. I don't see it ever being terrible. Like, there are certain cases where it's good, but in many cases, you're using 3 Magicka to trade with a lower cost minion in the hopes that you gain a buff on your action synergy cards, which would make it worth it. But if you don't, then that's not worth it at all, if that makes sense. So, yeah. I think this card you should keep just because it's never really bad. It's never really good. It's just like an okay card. In action synergy decks, I don't put it in. It just doesn't make the cut. But that's because there's so many better actions. Obviously, it's unplayable in aggro. In tempo, it's not good. In mid-range, it's not good enough. In control, it maybe makes the cut. I'd say that with very huge uncertainty. Murkwater Butcher. Obviously, he's playing a Goblin deck. If you're not running a Goblin deck, don't play him. 1 Magicka 3/2 is, even if his text goes off, which is really hard to do, he's okay. And if his text doesn't go off, he's unplayable. So don't play him. That risk is way too high. Murkwater Savage. He was nerfed. He was nerfed hard. Don't play him. Goblin decks, play him. Outside of that, Soul Trap him. Garbage card. Nimble Ally. At least for now, he's garbage. Maybe with Goblin Synergy more in the future or something good, he'll be playable again. Nimble Ally. People say this is the weakest of the allies. I can sort of agree. He's a 4/4 for 3 that has lethal. I mean, he's a stronger Young Mammoth, and Young Mammoth's considered really good. The thing that makes Young Mammoth really good, though, is that he's consistent, whereas this guy's not 100% consistent. You have to run a lot of green decks, or a lot of green cards. And in most green decks, green is the synergizer. Green is the support role, whereas the other color is the main role, if that makes sense. So you're going to always almost run more other colors in a green deck than you will green. Outside of, like, Archer, believe Archer runs more green than it runs red, I believe. Um, but and in that case, this guy doesn't see playing Archer either. So I think he's a safe soul trap. He's not really played right now. I don't think he's bad though. But like I said, 3 drops are so contested that this guy just doesn't make the cut. But probably barely. Skooma Racketeer. This card's a lot better than people give credit for. I kind of wish the card would give a creature lethal that is also in your hand. I think that'd be a really cool combo. I really wish it did that because it would be really cool to give like Odahviing lethal or something. Wouldn't that be a really cool combo? Like, come on. That would be really sick. That'd make this card extremely fun. But as it is right now, it's still playable. It's used in Mihax's deck, and I'll go back to that deck a lot of times, I know, but it's just he innovated pretty well with that deck, so it's played in that deck. It's really good in that deck. You can play on like Ashlanders, and they kill 2 cards for free, essentially, in most cases. Yeah, you can play a lot of cards like that, and they do work. You can play it on Archmage, technically, and then instead of doing 6 damage, he kills everything, but 6 damage usually kills everything anyways. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can play this on, obviously. You can play it with a charge minion, and then it pseudo makes it a Territorial Viper, and you develop a 2/2 at the same time, kind of thing. It can also give itself lethal, even worse case, and it's a threat in that sense that they have to deal with, sort of. So, yeah, it's a good card. You're not going to run it in aggro. You're going to run it in a decent amount of tempo decks. You're going to run it in a lot of mid-range decks. And you're going to think about running a control, but it might not barely make the cut, and you're not going to run it in ramp. Swift Strike. I also think she's interesting to run in a monk deck that's built around Imperial Might, but I have not made that deck yet. I do not have the cards yet. But don't worry, I have 1,000 gold, and I've been 7-0ing arenas a lot lately, so hopefully I'll get all the cards soon. But I think her with like Imperial Might, and you just have them keep coming out, infinite value, and then you pump and you play her, and then you trade into like a Manticore or something. Swift Strike. I think where this card sees play is as a one of, and only as a one of, and with Tazgad. Like against like say Control Mage, you need that last little bit to finish them off, and if you run like like a Tazgad with Swift Strikes and you happen to draw it, then it's an out you can have, right? But if you don't get it with Tazgad, then it's pretty much a dead card. And there is cases where the action synergy matters. There's cases where with Pilfer it sort of matters, but not really. Obviously, it's going to be playing combo decks. It's not really going to see play in control decks. It's not really going to see play in most mid-range decks. It's not going to see play in tempo decks, and it could see play in aggro decks. It's like a one of. But yeah. Thievery. Deal 3 damage to enemy space, heal for 3. It has action synergy, which is good. It is burn, which is good. Yeah, I don't think you too much want to play this. I did run it my Miracle Assassin, but that's just because I was going for the Miracle. Yeah, outside of that, you don't really want to play this. It's a safe soul trap for now. Varanus Courier. She's better than she looks, mainly because finish off Leaf Lurkers and Felon Nasty Reavers exist, so she's 100% played in those decks. She's played in Last Gasp decks. Obviously, you're not going to play her in aggro. You play her in some temple decks, strangely, but I don't think she really should be played in temple decks very much. Yeah, I don't think she should be playing temple decks, but she is. In mid-range decks, I think she's okay. In control decks, there's cases where she's good. But obviously in the Last Gas combo deck, she's really good. And she's playing Archer because of the combo with Finish Off and Leaf Lurker and Reavers. Solid card overall. And Zelial Invader. Maybe if Argonian synergy in the future. But right now, this guy should never be played. He dies to pretty much everything. The 5 damage won't matter if he dies. It's kind of like, you know, MOBAs, when it doesn't matter if you one-shot everyone, if you die one-shot as well. So this guy just dies to everything. Safe Soul Trap. Deshaun Avenger. This card's like starting to see play again. It was weird that she wasn't. In a token deck with green, she's absolutely insane. In last gas deck, she's okay. Uh, yeah, she's not ran in aggro. She's ran in quite a few. Or she's ran in tempo decks. She's ran in mid range decks, and she's sometimes thought about in control, but she doesn't quite make the cut. So definitely keep her. She's a really good card. Green Pact Stalker. This guy's an interesting card. For budget decks, he's really good. Like he's mainly for like an Archer synergy deck that wants to go mid range to control. But the issue with that is red doesn't really support control very well, and it's also a very reactive card instead of aggressive card. Like you'd rather be using like it's basically competing with things like Leaf Lurker. Like, do you want to kill a card, or do you want to set up a 5/6? And that's your options. And in most cases, you're like, I want to kill a card because you're playing more aggressively. But if you're playing a more reactive mid-range deck, this guy will make the cut. But the issue about reactive mid-range decks is that you just auto lose to control, which is a huge issue with control mage being a thing. Yeah, so I think he's a safe soul trap for now. But if reactive mid-range decks become good in this game, this guy will find a home. Hidden Trail. This card's interesting. It's one of the only lane manipulation cards in the game. I think it is the only one right now. So that's really cool to think about. Friendly creatures gain +1, +0, +1, or sorry, +1/+0, which is kind of like half a Divine Fervor. And it's all creatures, so that's interesting. And all lanes become shadow lanes. The issue is that can also help the enemy. The only way this is useful is in a complete combo deck with Khajiit. But then you're already playing so many supports that I don't think this makes the cut. So this is definitely a safe soul trap. I think it's a pretty sloppy card. With expansions, it could be really good, but for now, it's just, yeah, it's not going to see play. Moonlight Werebat. This guy, or Wirebat, sorry, Kappa, Firebat. This guy's really good. He's a 4 magic, a 4/3, which is unplayable, but he has Prophecy, which makes him playable. And then he has Drain, which makes him very playable with all those together. Don't think he's OP like some people think, but I think he's good. He completely counters aggro decks in their tracks. He's not going to be played in aggro. He will be played in tempo. He will be played in mid range, and he will be played in control. So as long as you're not aggro, you'll play this guy. He's pretty much a snap 3 of in every one of those 3 archetypes. Yeah, really good card. There's so many cases of this guy's just so good. He's pretty much the heal of this game. He's like the heal bot of this game. Like if you need heal in your deck, you run this guy. Murkwater Shaman. This guy's interesting. He's very slow, very reactive kind of guy, very value kind of guy. But he was ran in a tempo deck. I don't know about that. It was something, I guess. I can see why, like the Leaf Lurker and Finish Off and Valinesti Reverse Synergy, I guess. But I don't know. He's an interesting guy. I don't think you run him at Goblin decks because he's too slow for what they're trying to do. Yeah, I don't really like this guy. I know he was ran, so I hesitate to say that, but I just don't think he's that great. Like if you you could play him as a 4 magic, a 3/3, sure, and then he becomes with the curse and the Leaf Lurker and stuff synergy. But you already had that synergy if you play like a 1/3 courier. You already have that synergy if you play so many other things other than this guy. There's just so many cards that this guy's competing with, and this guy does not make the cut in my mind. I think he's a safe soul trap. Murkwater Skirmisher. This guy is what makes Goblin decks sort of scary when he goes off, but Goblin decks are so inconsistent right now that I think he's a safe soul trap for now if you want to. But if Goblin decks do become good in the future, this guy will be what's making them good. He's, like his stat line and what he does is extremely powerful with Goblins. Like this is really powerful card if there was more Goblins in the game, but there isn't. So right now he's not powerful. That makes sense. So he's a safe soul trap for now, but if Goblins become powerful, that guy will be a snap 3 of in that deck. Tamar Swiftclaw. She's a 4-drop that can win the game all by herself, but the issue with her is she's a 2/2, and she doesn't have charge. So when you play her, she will die to literally everything in the game outside of like rapid shots, which 2 health is pretty much dies to everything. So 3 health even pretty much dies to everything. 4 health dies to quite a few things, and then 5 health is where you don't die to a lot of things. So because she has 2 health, she just dies to everything. They can play a guard, and then you have to swap lanes with her to even make her relevant. There's so many things you have to do to make this card work that I think she's a safe soul trap for now. Maybe in the future she'll be playable, but for now there's just too many ways to easily kill her. And if she does become playable, I don't think I'll like this card, because if there's ways to like bypass guards and stuff with her easily, and there's ways to make her not die easily, then she's a card that gets out of hand really fast, if that makes sense. So Taric Toyo Viper. Obviously, you're not going to run this guy in aggro. You're not going to run this guy in tempo. You're not going to run this guy in mid-range. But you could run this guy in control. And he's maybe okay in ramp. But in a very reactive ramp or control. The thing about him is he is extremely reactive. He does combo with wards pretty well. But he is just super reactive. He can trade 2 for 1, which is nice. But the thing about him is that he doesn't do any damage to the face. He is completely removal. He just removes 1 creature. He's 4 magicka, kill a creature that doesn't have ward, basically. So you have to think, like, what does removal really do for you? It can stall to a crazy good late game win condition. Outside of that, it doesn't do enough. So if you're going to be going for that kind of route, then this guy's good. If you're not going to be going for that kind of route, he's not good. I also thought it was interesting. He has reptile. I thought he was an animal. So reptile, I actually just noticed that reptile apparently has its own tag, and I think he's the only reptile in the game. Thieves Den. This is ran in Boom's Life's Monk deck. Illuminati confirmed, but this thing's ran in that. Yeah, outside of that, the only thing I can see this ran in is kind of like a deck with like a niche deck with like Reaves and fiery imps and stuff, just giving people pilfer so they can constantly get buffs. Or an aggro deck, since you're always going to go face. So it's kind of like a Divine Fervor that is a little slower, but when it goes off, it's a lot more value. Outside of those decks, I don't think this will be ran. So keep it if you're planning on playing Monk. Keep it if you're planning on playing those decks. It'll probably get a lot more synergy in the future. Pilfer is one of those things that, like, Pilfer and Shaco are 2 of the mechanics in the game that will eventually be broken. Like, there's no way Pilfer's not going to eventually be broken. There's no way Shackle's not eventually going to be broken. So you should probably keep this card anyways, just because in the future, this text is going to be broken. It's just going to happen. I can't see it not happening. Like, Dairo's Distro might completely surprise us. But the thing is, Pilfer's infinite value, and Shackle is just so much stall, it's insane. So I don't see both those cards not eventually breaking some kind of text, sorry. So definitely I would keep it, just for even that reason alone. Torval Crook. I think she's better than she looks, just because you can do things like she's for a full Khajiit combo deck, by the way. You can do things though, like you can have her out, you can have the 3/5 guy out, you can have Thieves Den out, you can play her and Master of Thieves same turn, and then you charge in. She hits some 1/4. She comes at 3/6, and sorry, I'm wrong. She comes at 2/5. And then you charge in and hit again, and then she becomes a 3/6 for 4 that also gained you 4 magicka, and then you can just play something else as well. In that weird, strange case, she's really good, but outside of that case, she's not good enough. So yeah, she's kind of slow, but in that case, she's interesting, and I wouldn't write her out just because in the future, there's probably something in the game that makes her work. I'm just not thinking of it right now, and no one else has thought about it yet either. But yeah, she's definitely in that kind of combo deck. She's a huge threat for 4 magicka, and she's essentially free is what I'm trying to get at. Like, if you play her with Master of Thieves, like, or you play her, you have to have Thieves in out, which means you're probably not playing against purple, and you have to play Aura tokens, and you have to play Master of Thieves and her same turn, but she essentially pays for herself because she'll give you the 4 magicka back, so if you want to play something else. And she becomes a 3/6? Yeah, 3/6, which is really good for 4, especially since you got to push on 3 damage the second she came into play, and she's free. That makes sense. So she's essentially a 0 magicka 3/6 in that case, which is insane. But outside of that case, she's unplayable. That makes sense. So Interesting card. If you're a really huge brewer, then you could probably find something to break this card or some way to make that work more. But outside of that, it's probably safe to Soul Trapper for now. Cameron Scout Leader. I think this is one of the worst cards in the game. At best case, she's a 5 Magicka 6/6. Worst case, she's a 5 Magicka 2/2. Risk is huge. The reward is small. So no matter what this text says, I already think this card's pretty bad. And so they have Charge, which is something, but then they only can be played if they have wounded creatures. It's really hard to have wounded creatures, and once again, would you rather kill a wounded creature, or would you rather summon a 2/2 with Charge against a wounded creature? Every time, you'd rather kill the creature. So this card does not see play, save Soul Trap. I don't see any potential for this card yet. Cliff Racer. This card actually sees play, even though it looks very generic. It actually sees play. Oh, he has Reptile as well. I thought he was Dinosaur. I don't know. But this guy actually sees play. He's not good enough in control decks. He's okay in aggro decks, although he's a little slow for aggro decks, but maybe you could put like 1 to 2 of them just as a little bit of a like late game finish off for the enemy face. But mid-range and tempo is where he shines. He's just a really solid charge. Boom's Life also runs him in his deck, gives him Pilfer with Thieves' Den, and then gives him double attacks and such. So he's an interesting card. He's really good. Charge is really strong text. Paying 1 extra Magicka for it is really good. This guy's a solid card. There's a lot of ways to break this card. Like I said with Boom's Life's ideas, and just playing a tempo deck and then playing them out, playing a token deck with Divine Fervors, you can make this guy really powerful in that deck. And yeah, he's a solid card. Keep him. Elder Centaur. This guy is not good enough yet, in my opinion. Like, he can go face and he gets cover, and then he can just technically never be attacked, sort of like that. Sort of, but if they play a guard, he's screwed. If they play Lightning Bolt, he's screwed. If they play pretty much tons of things, he's screwed. Where he shines, in my opinion, actually, is in Arena, believe it or not. And the way I use him in Arena, I don't think I wrote this in the guide, but the way I use him in Arena is I'll attack in something that he can kill, and then he gains cover, so he's essentially always going to be a 2-for-1 if I play my cards right. That makes sense, in a literal sense, actually. So, yeah. But outside of that, this guy's a safe Soul Trap. Giant Snake. This card's good for Shackle decks, but Shackle decks aren't that good. He's good for stalling. He's 5 Magicka stall, make an enemy miss a turn in 1 lane, and summon a 3/3 at the same time, which is really strong. Once again, Shackle decks are probably going to be broken eventually. Kalinto broke one and got rank 1 legend with it, but he didn't run this guy in it. So I don't know how good this guy is, but he was also not running Assassin. He was running, what was it? Oh yeah, it was Mage. He was running Mage with the Shackle synergy, so yeah. I think this guy could see play in the future, but for now he's probably a safe Soul Trap, but definitely in the future, I think with even 1 expansion, we'll probably see some broken combo with this guy or something, some crazy thing he can do. Even if it's just stall a turn, that he just stall forever, and then I can play, you know, some card in the future that makes 3 fears or something, Vath Fear or something. That would be insane. So there might be something like that. Maybe he'll even fit that ramp deck, plays around the Hiss thing. Like maybe that's what ramp will be in the future. Maybe we'll just like have tons of stall like this guy, and we'll just keep stalling until we can get those 2 unstable Leviathans in both lanes, because those are so hard to deal with, right? So basically, if you can get off the 2 unstable Leviathans, you basically win, and this guy will help you do that. This guy will help you stall until you can do that. So yeah, maybe he'll see play in that deck. Maybe he will actually, like, Red Brahman's really strong, and people understand that, but Red Brahman also silences. So that's a thing. And this guy's essentially kind of like Red Brahman without the silence for his cost. He's like a miniature Red Brahman. So take that into consideration. So if you consider Red Brahman extremely powerful, you might consider this guy pretty powerful. He stalls everything. So I think I might try him in that deck. But I still think he's a safe Soul Trap for you. I'm going to brew, but you might be a safe Soul Trap. Brew just means I'm going to try crazy things and try to make it work. Green Touch Spriggan, safe Soul Trap. She's the card that if you're going to run a Drain Synergy deck with her, maybe like Dova can try to make this work, and he couldn't make this work at all on stream. I saw him. He tried so hard. But yeah, she's just it's kind of like running OTK Priest in Hearthstone, right? Yeah, or not OTK, sorry. The Divine Spirit Inner Fire combo Priest. That's exactly what this is like. You're basically playing a card that's extremely weak. You're playing tons of cards that are extremely weak on their own, like Health Potion and this, and you're trying to get so lucky that you can play this. It doesn't die, and they don't do something to stop you from hitting them in the face, and then you play tons of cards, and you give this, what is it? It's like you give it the, you have to have Swift Strikes, and you have to have the one card, or you have to give her Swift Strikes, and you have to play some health potions, and you have to play that one card. What is it? Snake Tooth Necklace, sorry. Almost forgot. And give her Drain. And then you play the health potion, and then she attacks in, and their health becomes crazy, and you Swift Strike, and then you OTK them. That's how that combo kind of works, but it's a lot more than just that. It's like 2 health potions even or something, but like I said, it's like playing Priest. Don't do it. Soul Trap this card. In the future expansions, maybe it should be good. Leaf Lurker. This guy's obviously really strong. You develop a body while killing a minion. What else is there needed to be said? It's kind of like Piercing Javelin. If Piercing Javelin had a 4/3 attached to it. Like, what else do I need to say? This guy's really good. Not played in aggro. He's played in tempo. He's played in mid-range. He's played in control. Yeah, really strong card. Don't soul trap him. Play him in those decks I just stated. Necro Mastermind. This guy's a really strong card. I think he's highly underrated. He's a little hard to get off at times, but there's so many last gas in this game that if you can just activate him for free and then activate him again, it makes it completely insanely broken. So the fact that this guy can break the game is really strong. Unfortunately, Wismother took a huge hit, so that really nerfs him with Wismother combos, but he can still be played alongside, realistically, 1 Spy Master and maybe 1 to 2 Kinsmen, or a 3/3 that turns into a 3/3, maybe even a Courier, maybe some Ashlanders. Like, any one of those, even just an even playing this guy with just an Ashlander is basically making him a fire elemental from Hearthstone. Like, that's really good. So this guy's a really good card. Keep him if you have him. Obviously, he's going to be running Last Gas decks, and he's not going to be running anything else. There's no reason to run this guy if you're not running a lot of Last Gas at all. Pomerot Renegade. This guy's interesting. Yeah. The thing about this guy is he gives you unlimited card draw, and the fact that he's Khajiit makes me think they're trying to go for where you can give him Pilfer, make him attack twice, and draw tons of cards. But at that point, why don't you just run the 2/2 that draws you cards anyways, and he's not really run very much anyways. This guy does have good stats, but I don't know. Like, he's just really slow. Like, you play him, he doesn't do anything the turn he's played. He's a 5-drop. Yeah, there's a lot of ways he can die without gaining any values. You have to somehow give him like charge or something, or ward or something. I don't know. Yeah, giving him drain would be insane, and making him attack twice. Like, there's combos like that where you draw tons of cards. So maybe he'll find a home eventually, but for now I think he's a safe soul trap. But there's definitely probably some way to make this guy good. It's just that he's really, really slow. So you have to be running him in a deck that can play from ahead and can benefit off drawing cards while playing a little slow for a bit to get those cards, if that makes sense. So in most cases, Jarl's just a better version of this guy. But if you don't have Jarl and you don't have access to Jarl, I mean, like, you're not playing red, then maybe this guy makes the cut. Probably not, though. Snowy Sabercat. In the future, if there's some way to give this guy charge with weapons and such, he could maybe be really strong. But outside of that, I don't see this guy being played. He has decent stats for the fact that he attacks twice. Remember, like, he's not actually a 6/7 just because if he attacks once to something with high attack, he could die. So, yeah, there's a lot of things he dies to, and his attack's not to where it auto kills a lot of things, especially creatures that are going to be played around turn 5. So I think he just doesn't make the cut, really. He's a safe soul trap for now. In the future, I think there'll be ways to break him. Soul Rest Marshal. He's not played in control. He's... Yeah, he could see playing aggro. He seems like he's a little slow for aggro, but maybe. He's obviously played in tempo and some mid-range decks. I think he's an okay card. He's not amazing. He's not terrible. He's one of the cards that you benefit from for playing Kinsman and such. He lets you if you play him and like Blood Dragon at the same turn, that's insane, but that's pretty hard to pull off. Like any kind of combos like that make him insane. His risk is that you could just not be able to play him with anything. He's a 5 magic of 4/4, so it's only an okay risk for a possible huge reward, but the reward's really, really hard to get. Really hard. Like, if you think you're going to get Blood Dragon every time you have this guy and always be ahead on HP while having Blood Dragon and this guy in your hand, you're insane. So that's like rarely going to happen. So, but he is a good card. Definitely don't soul trap him, and there's a lot of decks that he works in, as I stated. Highland Lurcher, 7/5 or 6. This guy is just stats, raw stats. Yeah, he's not really gonna see play. 6 Magicka is where you're starting to play your. This is like hyper late game in this game, considering how the games are right now. And granted, he has 5 HP, so it means he doesn't die a lot of things, and 7 attack does trade into a lot of things. But for 6 Magicka, a lot of times you can get way bigger things than this. Yeah. And so yeah, he's not played in any of the decks, really. Quinral Burglar. This guy is a 6-drop that can just win the game on his own. If left unchecked, he does die to pretty much almost everything. He doesn't have 3 HP, so he doesn't die to quite a bit of everything. But he has 4 HP, which means he dies to almost everything. And guards stop him from doing what he wants to do. He's really strong, obviously, in a Khajiit built around deck and a combo built around deck. He's really strong in. He sucks in aggro, he sucks in control. But what he's good in is some tempo decks, combo decks, and he's okay in some mid-range decks. He's just that. He's like the biggest thing you'll run. Like you'll top out at him and Tazgad, and that's like your big threats in those kind of decks. So definitely keep him. He's a really strong card. You get one for free anyways. You know how good he can be. Ransack. It's one of the cards I used to say was pretty good. Everyone said it sucked, but I still disagree with them. It can be a 0 magic, deal 3 to anything, not just their health. It's not thievery. If it was just deal damage to face, this card would be unplayable. Because you can deal it to anything, it's basically like playing, like worst case, you're paying 3 extra magicka to heal 3 health off Crushing Blow, which I think is fine. Like if you're going to play it late game, that's fine. Playing it for free, though, is so insane. But it's completely for aggro. It's completely for Prophecy built around decks. Outside of those 2 decks, this is unplayable. But in those 2 decks, really good card. Really strong card. So I would keep it. Smuggler's Hall. I already did a complete review thing about this. So I don't think I should get into it, really. I think it's a good card. People are saying it's not. I think it's good. You have to run it in Action Synergy decks, though. 100%. No other deck doesn't work in. And it has to be built around. Wild Beast Color. There's some people that love this card. I don't like this card. It's extremely heavy RNG. Just don't run this card. Maybe if there's animal decks in the future, this card would be good. If there's decks that completely revolve around having tons of animals or something. And here's another thing. She is really strong in token decks. In a monk token deck, this card's insane. Even if you get Mud Crab, she can be 4/5 and 3/2, so that is 7/7 in stats for 6, and that's like worst case with Divine Fervor. So if you're running token decks in green, this needs to be ran. Period. This is made for token monk decks right now. Outside of that, though, don't run her. So if you're running monk decks and you're running token monk decks, and that's what you like to run, then you're probably running it. She's one of the reasons why you're running it. Period. Her and the 3/3 with Death Rattle. Last Gasp. That becomes a 3/3. So those are 2 of the reasons why you're running it. Outside of that, though, you're not really going to be running this card. There's no other decks. Maybe in animal synergy decks in the future, you'll run her. But outside of that, she's too much RNG, and like you're not ever going to realistically get what you want. And there's a lot of times you'll get a Mud Crab. So if you're planning around that, then the only case where she's always good is in a Divine Fervor token deck with her in Monk. In that case, they'll run her. But outside of that, don't run her. She's a safe soul trap. But if you're going to run that deck, like I said, really good card. Chorus Reaper. This guy's extremely strong for budget. Outside of budget, he can be. He's essentially a 9/8 for 7 in some cases. But the enemy, you have to be playing a deck that plays from really far behind. And in this meta, you typically don't want to do that. He is a reactive card. He works with Reaver technically, but you'd rather be running Pyromancers in that case. Uh, but maybe that can work. I don't think so though. What this guy mainly does is he mainly just answers token decks as like a pseudo way in ramp decks that don't have access to like ice storms and all that. But yeah, outside of that, he's not a very great card. He's very reactive. Good budget card. Wouldn't run him outside of budget really. Spider Layer. This card's interesting. Like I think it's way too slow for Constructor right now. But there is times when, like, if you make it to late game, you can stall, then this card will just win you the game all by itself late game, especially with Rocklar Forge. But I think it's just a little too slow right now. Maybe we'll see Spider synergy in the future, but right now it's a safe soul trap. Yeah, this is the thing. This is the only card I've ever soul trapped, by the way. Just straight up soul trapped. You can do it too. I believe in you. Don't try to make this card work. It doesn't work. Yeah, there's just nothing this card works in. It dies to everything. Even if you buff it up to 3, realistically with Divine Fervor, it still dies to everything. Why are you running a Divine Fervor deck in the first place? Who knows? The only way that would work is if you can somehow Silencer the same turn. I don't know. I don't know why you'd run this card. Realistically, what is she good at? Like, even if you run her as a control deck against a control deck to beat another control deck, and you can silence her the same turn, that's what you're building around. Why do that? Because it's just a bunch of 2/1s to do that, and then they can Ice Storm anyways, and it all dies anyways. Doesn't make any sense. This card's just really, really freaking bad, and like it is completely a meme. In the future, maybe if we get some synergy with it, it could be playable. But right now, this is the joke of the set. This is complete utter garbage. Just completely soul trap this. I don't even know why it's legendary. Maybe if we get Spider Synergy, it'll be good. But for now, yeah, joke card. Tazgad is Tazgad. This is the Leroy Jenkins of this game. Not only is he Leroy Jenkins, he has Last Gasp. He has Breakthrough. Alright, so a 6/6 for 8 is unplayable. Give a 6/6 for 8 Breakthrough, and you're like, it's okay, still wouldn't play it. Give it Charge. Okay, playing it. Already, I'm playing it. That's really strong. Breakthrough Charge, 6/6 for 8. That's good enough for me. Give him Last Gas, I'm going to 4/4. Holy crap. This guy has so much power built into one card. Yeah, he's just a finisher for tons of decks. He's can be ran in aggro as like your last little ditch effort to kill them. Ran in tempo decks, ran in mid-range decks, ran in combo decks, and he's ran in control decks. This guy's a really strong card. Definitely keep him. Nest of Vipers. I think this card's better than people give it credit for. It's extremely reactive, which is the issue. Completely broken in draft, by the way. This card almost always trades like 3 to 4 for 1. So that's really good. In a control versus control matchup, it's really good stall. Maybe if they're in the future where it's also to be noted, it works with Astromancer. So like you can play Astromancer, play into this, and it's like 8 damage and technically 12 damage with this add-on, assuming that one of your guys dies and all that and such, and your Astromancer somehow lives, which is kind of hard to pull off, but you get my point. That is a little bit of something. This card, in the future, if like there's an assassin deck that only has one, or any kind of deck that works with green that just has one huge win condition, I just need to stall forever until they get that one win condition, this card's going to see a lot of play. Outside of that, I still play this card sometimes here and there, just because it's so good in so many matchups. It's extremely late game, but if you get off of Thieves Guild Recruit, or if you can ramp into it easily, like in a hyper ramp deck, then I think it's still pretty good. It just auto wins you a game against mid range, auto wins you a game against tempo if you get it off. Against control, some cases it can auto win you a game as well. Like they stack the board with their big minions late game, they think they're gonna win. You play this and it trades for all of them, right? And you can play from behind like that against control because you're not really in any threat to die ever, pretty much. So yeah, I think it's a better card than people give it credit for. Well, hope you guys have a great night, great day, wherever you're from, as my good friend Sean would say. And I love you all. Hope you like this review of Agility.